Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the all-new Mafia and Gangsters video. Alright, let's go ahead and let's do another entry here. This one yet again based on one of your newer suggestions. I'm having a great time, by the way, doing these videos. Not only have they been fun, and a lot of the suggestions are great, but also YouTube has been very easy when it comes to its monetization. So I haven't had any issues with these videos yet. So please be on the lookout for maybe a couple of more here in this series, and then I'll go ahead and I'll give it a rest. This entry here, though, what's fascinating is that there's a direct link to one of my past videos. Apparently, Willie Two Knife Altieri will make a cameo here in a few minutes, but I just loved reading that information because it's fascinating to see how many worlds are just intertwined together, just out of the blue. Very, very coincidental, but still, when I saw that name, I realized that this was going to be interesting as far as that cameo. But yes, indeed, as far as this gangster, he was someone that was born in the early 1900s, led a brutal life, and then ended up dying at a young age too. But then he still had a very prominent name and a prominent history. So his name was officially Richard Lonergan, who you're looking at a picture of here. But as always, there's nicknames associated with these gangsters, and he went by the name of Peg Leg. So let's go ahead and let's talk about all the fascinating info associated with this short-lived gangster. So who was this Richard Peg Leg Lonergan? Well, when I say short-lived, you'll know what I mean here in a minute. But yes, he was someone that was born back in 1900, January 16th, there in Brooklyn, New York. So right off the bat, he was born in the midst of essentially everything as far as the world of mafia and the world of gangsters. In fact, when he was born there, it was in an area that was, I guess it was surrounded by several docks, and it was already between Manhattan and the Brooklyn waterfront, already just ripe for the type of activity that would lead to his career as a criminal. He was born apparently to a very beautiful woman named Anna Lonergan, who was known as the Queen of the Irishtown Docks. And then his father was someone who was a bare knuckle boxer by the name of John Lonergan. So again, it gives you an idea. A bare knuckle boxer. It's something that's a rough parenthood. In other words, when it came to him growing up, not only that, but he was number 15 when it came to the number of children born within that family. So it didn't take long for this guy, for Richard Lonergan, to start his criminal career. The reason, though, why he was later called Peg Leg was because of this. Sometime in his childhood, he lost his right leg whenever he had an accident by a trolley car. I wasn't able to get too much details on it, but I imagine either he fell down or something happened and he was pushed. Whatever was the case, this trolley car no doubt ran over his right leg, and then that's when he ended up losing it. So something along those lines, he had some kind of wooden leg that was placed there, and then that's why he was called Peg Leg. I don't know, though, if this was something that he liked or just people referred it to him just out of the blue. But either way, though, that's where the name stuck, especially later on when he was servicing the underworld. But yes, eventually he started his career there within the criminal underworld. And when that happened, he quickly developed a fearsome reputation around an area that was known as Irishtown. So this was a location, again, by the Brooklyn waterfront, where there were a lot of Irish Americans who had moved over, and they were there just living their life, but at the same time there were some of those there that were involved within criminal activities. And then that was this guy Peg Leg. But he developed a very, very mean let's say reputation, especially when it came to hunting or looking for Italian Americans. This guy unfortunately was a racist. He was someone that was well known in terms of his hatred of Italian Americans, and in fact he went on a specific hunting expedition later on in terms of saloons and dive bars all along the waterfront, because A, he wanted to do it for fun, and then B, he also wanted to make sure, according to him and the gang he joined, the White Hand gang, they thought that there was a lot of Italian Americans encroaching within that territory, especially not only when it came to living there, but also the aforementioned criminal activities. Let's talk about that first too, about the White Hand gang. So this was a gang that Peg Leg ended up joining sometime in his younger career, time period. I think it was in his teens or so whenever he joined them. And the White Hand Gang was named as such because it was actually a complete opposite from the Black Hand Gang. So the Black Hand Gang was be associated with the mafia, with the Italian Americans. Those that would join it would be known as the Black Hand. And so when that happened, and again, this crew, in other words, were there as far as the Sicilians operating things there in New York, and then apparently doing so very successfully. The White Hand Gang was formed as a counterbalance. This was formed by not just Peg Leg, but others that were there too, thinking that they again felt that there was this encroachment. Unfortunately, though, when it came to the White Hand Gang, they were not as organized as their counterparts as far as the Sicilians. In fact, when I was reading some information on it, it seemed like they hurt themselves more than the other gangs did, because apparently there was a lot of infighting associated with that White Hand Gang. So what would happen was people would try to decide on something, and when that didn't happen, then violence just resorted among its members, and there was apparently a quick succession of leaders because they would basically get killed. One of the last ones before Peg Leg became the leader of the White Hand Gang was known as Bill Lovett, and he ended up actually being the brother-in-law of Peg Leg himself. So the two of them were there in that White Hand Gang, and they would go around again these saloons and other type of bars, just trying to find any excuse in terms of their hatred of Italian Americans to create this kind of murder. I don't think they were doing it also for business purposes other than trying to stop growing business, but you know what I mean? Like, in other words, they weren't doing it in terms of contract killings or other type of things associated with money. But no, it seemed like it was more along the lines of just pure racial hatred. That's all it was. So on one of those fateful nights, though, the leader of that time, Bill Lovett, who again was the brother-in-law of Richard Lonergan, was killed. And even to this day, the whereabouts of how he was killed is being disputed. Apparently, he walked drunken, in other words, into a blank building, maybe some kind of deserted building. He went there with one of his associates, and he just decided to sleep it off right there in the middle of that deserted building. But by the next morning, he was found bludgeoned to death. So something happened along the night where somebody came forward and then used some kind of blunt object to basically kill him by hitting it on the head, and he never woke up afterward. And as far as who caused this, it's unknown. In fact, people looking at the investigation think that it was actually members within the own White Hand Gang that were doing this because, again, of the fierce rivalry that was associated within the gang members themselves. But others actually point to this. Remember, I was mentioning that cameo earlier from Willie Two Knife Altieri. Well, apparently he was assigned to assassinate this guy Bill Lovett. He was just waiting for him at the right time, and that's when he was passed out there in that place. He found them there and apparently used one of his trademark meat cleavers to do so. That's more on the fantastical side as far as like the explanation of Bill Lovett and his killing. But again, the more common theory is the notion that it's going to be more along the lines of Levitt's own gang, or maybe even a rival Irish gang, because there was a lot of infighting between other Irish gangs too, and they were all just fighting amongst themselves, and that led to his own death. Either case, though, Peg Leg himself then became leader, and it didn't take long for him to escalate things. He started going more and more along the lines of the New York waterfront. He apparently was involved with a large number of fights, large number of shootouts with Frankie Yale and others as well, all along, again, the waterfront, because they're trying to protect their territories there. All of it culminated, though, unto one fateful night, Christmas of all days, December 25th, 1925. So this would have made Peg Leg around 25 years or so at the time. On that fateful night, him and 5 of his men there from the White Hand Gang went into a club that was known as the Adonis Social Club. And as they went there, they obviously went there with something in mind, because as soon as they went in, they started to act completely unruly and intoxicated to everyone that was there. In fact, they were openly calling a lot of the customers their very, very strong racial names. I'm not going to repeat them here for the sake of YouTube, but yes, they were making these names out loud. Apparently there were these Irish girls, women that walked in as well, and when they did so, they were chased out by these men. They were just creating just havoc all night long within that club. Well, as it turns out, all of a sudden, the lights went out within the club itself. Sometime later that night, everything was blacked out. And when that occurred, all of a sudden there was glass that was shattered, and then there was gunshots that were coming inside that location. This area was suddenly splattered with a bunch of bullets and a bunch of gunshots seemingly coming from nowhere, but all of them going inward towards their area. And so Peg Leg and 5 of his men, they all started just running about, trying to escape that location. It pretty much read to me that they were targeted for this type of gunshots, for this type of assassination. And when police later investigated this, they found Peg Leg's best friend, his name was Aaron Harms, dead on the street. And when they found a blood trail leading outside of the club, somewhere around the club into another area, in this case by a player piano, that's where they found Peg Leg himself. Him and another guy by the name of Needles, there on the dance floor, shot. Not only shot, but they were shot execution style. So it read to me like they were shot, they were wounded, they went to that cornered area, and then whoever was doing the shooting basically went up straight to them and then shot him in the head, execution style. And then another member, apparently only one of the 5 of the entire gang was able to escape. And when he did so, he was found alive. He was found shot in his thigh and his legs. He was taken to a hospital, but as is typical with gang-related activity, he refused to say anything. In fact, he even stated that he wasn't even in that club himself, even though others know that would have listed him there as eyewitnesses. He stated, that wasn't me, I wasn't there. In fact, he stated that he got shot by a car that was somehow passing by at that exact moment. So either way, though, he never gave anyone else up, but still, the mystery as to who caused this shooting remains to this day. So quite a bit of irony when it comes to that. His brother-in-law, Bill Lovett, was killed in a mysterious manner, and then this guy, Peg Leg Lonergan, ended up also being killed in a mysterious manner. No one knows, in other words, who was the culprit associated with it. There have been theories to this as well, even going as so far as Al Capone himself apparently ordering this kill, or going back again to Frankie Yale, who Peg Leg was having a rivalry with as far as the encroachment of the Italian Americans. But again, no one has come forward with any kind of credits. Probably no one did, because they didn't want to create any more trouble for themselves. They just wanted to get rid of Peg Leg. And once that happened, the White Hand Gang was basically gone. Like, they were disembarked. There was, at that point, so much fragileness associated with the gang. All the infighting, all the succession, the murders that were occurring between their own members, let alone from other families, from other rival gangs. And so when that happened, the death of Peg Leg himself ended up disbanding the entire the operation. And then that was it. That, interestingly, that allowed the Italian Americans, the Sicilians, and others to take control quite easily of the Brooklyn waterfront. And then that led to their control over the rest of New York and other areas there too. In fact, that's where the 5 families eventually came from whenever they created all this new atmosphere of the mafia there. But quite fascinating, when you read all this history, how all that just plays along with each other, especially, again, as I mentioned earlier, that cameo when it came to the death of Bill, and that was from Willie Two Knife Altieri. So what do you guys think as far as this? Peg Leg himself, a man who died at 25 years of age, but still what he did, and then what eventually his death ended up causing, is still a bunch of history within the United States. But if anybody has any more info, anything else I might have missed, maybe somebody knew more information about his early life. I wasn't able to get much on it in terms of his childhood or his early teens, but it did seem to me like right off the bat, considering his circumstance, where he lived, where he was growing up, his parents, child number 15, and again, all of it just being right smack in the middle of gangster heaven, that it was just pretty easy to see why he would lead that kind of life afterward. But again, if anyone has any info, please post the comments below. All right, everyone. Thanks again as always. Take care. Bye.